The first time I saw Easy Rider, I was about 14. At the end of the movie, I was like, what in the world did I just watch? Two guys deal some drugs, go on a road trip, have some random encounters, and then die? This isn't a movie. After about 4 hours of talking with my father, he uttered to me those famous words that all parents tell their children. You'll understand when you get older. What were we spending 4 hours talking about? The American dream.
Architectural Artcast.
What is the American dream? Is it owning a house with the white picket fence, the spouse, the 2 kids, the 1.5 dogs? No. Not at all. The American dream is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We often simplify this complex web of ideas and philosophies down into one word, one loaded, complicated word: freedom. America is all about freedom, but what does freedom mean? World War II, this country sacrificed so much, the lives of an entire generation, both the dead and those who were scarred for the rest of their lives. We outpoured massive amounts of our national wealth, all in the name of preserving freedom. But after the war, so many Americans came to question, what was all the sacrifice for? What exactly does freedom mean? By the early 1960s, cracks were beginning to appear in society. Americans were losing faith in their institutions. A whole new generation was being asked to sacrifice themselves in another war that no one could explain why we were even fighting in the first place. Out of this came very rational questions. Are the older, more traditional ways of thinking, traditional ways of ordering society, traditional morals and values no longer working? Should we think about restructuring society in new ways, with new values and morals? And out of these questions came a movement that the entire 60s are now identified with: the counterculture. Tune in, turn on, drop out. Hippies, yippies, and bikers. Peace, man. Free love, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And all this was started in an attempt to rediscover the American dream, to find freedom. In 1969, there was the Altamont Music Festival. It was meant to be the Woodstock of the West Coast, a celebration of everything the counterculture represented, all their accomplishments. And it became known as the day the 60s died. Come to find out, all of these disparate groups that were supposed to be working together to create the new utopia, they didn't much like each other. The Hells Angels, bikers in general, they were supposed to be the centurions of the left, the vanguard, shock troops, the violent fist that would lead the revolution that overthrew the old fascist order and replace it with the new leftist utopia. There was one problem with this whole idea. No one bothered to check with the bikers if they were down with all of this. They weren't. They had their own motives and agendas, and it had nothing to do with leftist ideology. At the Altamont Music Festival, the Hells Angels were hired to be security for the musicians, and during the Rolling Stones set, they killed one of the audience members. While the details of exactly what happened and who are to blame are really murky, one thing we do know: the Hells Angels didn't much care for hippies, and they didn't have a whole lot of patience for minorities either. So much for peace, love, and tolerance. By '69, the counterculture movement was already dead. There were pockets where it sputtered on, people trying to keep the dream alive, but by '69, it was dead. Altamont is just the moment everybody recognized it was dead. Why did the 1960s counterculture movement die? Easy Rider, the Allegory by Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, tells us exactly why the counterculture movement died. They lost their way. They took their eyes off the prize. They forgot why the movement was founded in the first place. The quest for the American dream. The search for freedom. As I said at the beginning of this video, Easy Rider's plot, if you can even call it a plot, is pretty straightforward. two bikers complete a major drug deal. They take their ill-gotten loot, hide it in one of the gas tanks of their motorcycles, and then they take off across America, headed to Florida to live the good life. Along the way, they plan on stopping in New Orleans for Mardi Gras. The movie is direct. It tells us, the audience, exactly what the two main characters, Peter Fonda's Captain America, Dennis Hopper's Billy, it tells us exactly what they represent, what they symbolize. Freedom. Captain America, Billy, and George, Jack Nicholson's character, have just been run out of a small town by intolerant locals. They're sitting around the campfire discussing what had just happened when George tells Billy exactly why they were run out of that small town. They're not scared of you, they're scared of what you represent to them. Billy, not understanding what had just happened, says all we represent to them is somebody who needs a haircut. George says, no. You represent something far more dangerous to them. Freedom. Captain America and Billy symbolize freedom. They symbolize the American dream. But they're not the same. They represent two very different American dreams. Captain America, he's the authentic American dream. Billy, he's a false American dream, an illusion, a lie. We see the difference between the two right from the beginning. When they go to buy the drugs, Captain America takes enough drugs to determine that they're good. He doesn't have any moral qualms about taking drugs, getting high, but the only reason why he's taking the drugs is because it's part of his job. He's just doing business. Billy, on the other hand, he sticks his face down in that plate and he snorts up as much as he can. He's doing business so that he can get high. This idea is further reinforced when the two sell the drugs to the rich client. The rich client tests the drugs for himself, finds them satisfactory, and then offers some to Captain America, who politely declines. For Captain America, the drugs are a means to an end, not an end in of themselves, unlike Billy's attitude. We also see the two have very different attitudes when it comes to money. When the wealthy client's bodyguard pulls out the cash, Billy has his hand out, gimme, gimme, gimme. Captain America pushes Billy aside. Whoa there, cowboy, slow down. He then takes the money and very methodically counts it, making sure it's what they agreed to. Again, for Captain America, the money's a means to an end, not an end in of itself. And again, unlike Billy. We see these themes repeated throughout the movie over and over again. Captain America is constantly showing restraint, whereas Billy is on the edge of being completely out of control. For Captain America, the journey is what matters. Drugs are for enlightenment, seeing the world in a whole new way. He tries to understand other people's perspective. He tries to give as much as he takes. Billy, on the other hand, is completely selfish and self-centered. People only exist to provide him what he wants in the moment. If they don't treat him in the way he expects, he becomes angry and belligerent. Sex, drugs, and money, they're the end in of themselves. With the drug money safely secured in Captain America's gas tank, the two bikers head off across America to find the American dream. The very first group the two meet on their journey, the rancher and his family, are kind and hospitable. They allow the two bikers to use the barn to fix Captain America's bike. The rancher then invites Captain America and Billy to have dinner with him and his family. As they chat while they eat, the rancher says, "Yeah, when I was young, I was headed to LA, but I never made it past this town. That's where I met my wife. But I wouldn't change anything because I'm a lucky man." Captain America looks around at the rancher, the rancher's wife, his large family, the ranch itself, and he says, "Yeah, you are lucky." The rancher's like, "Ah, shucks, no. And Captain America says, "No, you're able to live off the land and provide for your family. Not anybody can do that. You have a great life here. You are lucky." The rancher and his family, they have the American dream. They have freedom. And Captain America has just figured out what he wants. He wants a family of his own, and he wants to be able to support them by living off the land. The very next group that the two bikers meet is a bunch of hippies trying to live off the land. How the two bikers met this group was through an act of kindness. Captain America stopped to give a stranger a ride. This stranger turns out to be one of the leaders of this group, and he invites the two bikers to hang out for a while. After hanging around a while, getting to know the community a little better, and he gets to know one of the young ladies really well, he starts to realize this just might be what he's been looking for all along. A family, and the opportunity to provide for that family by living off the land. Was it fate, karma, serendipity? But Captain America had the chance at his American dream, the ability to live his life as he saw fit. All he needed was the awareness that it was being offered and the courage to reach out and grab it. Billy isn't having any of it. After taking care of his immediate physical needs, he's ready to move on. He has money burning a hole in his pocket, and New Orleans is calling. He's already looking for the next adventure, the next party, the next good time, the next high. Captain America allows Billy to persuade him to leave, knowing full well what he's giving up. This is the moment Captain America gives up the American dream, gives up the quest for freedom. This is where the movie starts to turn dark, because the very next thing that happens to the two bikers, they get arrested, thrown in jail. They meet George, the son of a local powerful politician who bails them out. George is a troubled young man. Despite being a lawyer, the son of this local powerful politician, his future all planned out rosy for him, or maybe it's exactly because of that. He's an alcoholic who gets into fights all the time. He's constantly being arrested. George is sympathetic to the two bikers. He admires their ability to go riding across the country wherever they please, all willy-nilly. George pulls a card out of his wallet, and he shows it to the two bikers, and he tells them the governor of Louisiana, a close personal friend of his father's, had given it to him. And it was an invitation to the House of Blue Lights, the greatest bordello in all of the world that just so happens to be located in New Orleans. George tells them, I'd really like to check this place out someday, but I'll probably never make it. And Captain America says, well, why not? And George says, well, reasons. Captain America says, why don't you come with us? And George is like, okay. And that decision leads directly to George's death by intolerant locals in another small town. Billy wants to steal the invitation to the House of Blue Lights off of George's body. Captain America, who knows this is wrong, goes along with it. We have to ask ourselves, why did George pull that card out and show it to Captain America and Billy in the first place? George was going to give them the card. Hey, seeing as how I'll never make it to New Orleans and you all are going, here, have a good time on me. When Captain America invited George to go with them, he became partially responsible for George's death. Captain America is racked with guilt. All Billy cares about is the next good time, the next high. If that comes at the cost of somebody else's life, whatever. He justifies taking the card off of George's body by saying, he would have wanted us to have this. It is true that George wanted them to have that card, which makes what they do even worse. The two descend into depravity. I mean, they're doing drugs and having sex in a cemetery. One of the traditional ways to be initiated into black magic, witchcraft, is by having sex on a grave while you're in an altered state. Some pretty dark symbolism going on here. After leaving New Orleans on their way to Florida, Billy's ecstatic. We did it. We win. We got all the money. We have the American dream. And Captain America tells him, no, Billy, we blew it. Those Southern rednecks were just the mechanism of their death. The reason why they died is because they lost their way. They lost sight of what their real goals were. They gave up the American dream. They gave up their freedom, all in pursuit of an illusion, a lie. Ultimately, this is why the whole 1960s countercultural experiment failed. They lost their way. They forgot the purpose of what they were doing. Freedom. All the things that they were experimenting with were meant to be mechanisms that helped facilitate this quest for freedom. Take, for instance, free love. The argument was traditional morality, social institutions, put false and arbitrary barriers between people. If you would strip all that away, allow us to be more authentic in our relationships, we would develop true intimacy. By 1969, the quest for true intimacy was starting to be replaced with the nihilistic hedonism that became the hallmark of the 1970s. There was a similar pattern with drug use. Late 50s, early 60s, people started experimenting with drugs to free their mind, to see the world in new and unique ways, to find a connection with the cosmos. But after a while, the high became the goal, followed by addiction, death, and destruction. George symbolizes the price that America had to pay for this countercultural experiment. All the youth of America who got lured into this experiment and had their lives destroyed. Some of them, like George, died directly because of it. I'd like to read to y'all a poem. Now, granted, this poem isn't the greatest poem ever written, but I think it perfectly encapsulates what freedom means within the context of the American dream. And coincidentally, it was written about a year before Easy Rider came out. Dusty old helmet, rusty old gun. They sit in the corner and wait. Two souvenirs of the Second World War that have witnessed the time and the hate. Mute witness to a time of much trouble, where kill or be killed was the law. Were these implements used with eye honor? What was the glory they saw? Many times I have wanted to ask them, and now that we're here all alone, relics all three of that long ago war, where has freedom gone? The helmet and the gun answer the poet's question, and they reply, freedom flies in your heart like an eagle. Let it soar with the winds high above, among the spirits of soldiers now sleeping. Guard with care and with love. The poet responds back, I salute my old friends in the corner. I agree with all they have said. And if the moment of truth comes tomorrow, I'll be free, or by God, I'll be dead. From the late 40s all the way through the early 2000s, the government, social institutions have been trying to convince the American people that the American dream is owning your own home. It's stuff. It's the house, the fancy cars, the cocktail parties, the hot wife or the handsome husband on your arm. It's the 2 kids, the 1.5 pets. Last 20 years or so, the government, social institutions changed their mind. They no longer want the American people to own their own homes. They're doing everything in their power to prevent people from owning their own homes. And they're now saying, you don't have stuff. So therefore, the American dream is dead. No, it's not, because the American dream isn't about stuff. The house, the car, money, they're means to an end, not goals in of themselves. The American dream is an idea that lives in here. The power of an idea that so frightens governments and institutions is that no one can take an idea from you but you. Easy Rider is a cautionary tale that also explains why the 1960s countercultural movement ended up failing. The counterculture movement started off with legitimate criticisms of the 1950s, but they ended up falling victim to the exact same problem. They traded ideas for stuff. Things that started off as a means to an end ended up becoming ends in of themselves. The author of the poem that I just read to y'all was Audie Murphy, and he was saying that some 23 years after the end of the war, all those years of anguish and suffering because of the suffering and pain that he experienced during the war, That freedom was so important to him that he would willingly make that same sacrifice all over again. In fact, he would lay his life down if that's what it took to preserve freedom. Freedom, it's kind of a big deal, and it's in here. No one can take it from you but you. Are you going to trade it for a few baubles? At any rate, I hope I've given you all something to think about, and until next time, y'all be safe. If y'all are still here, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. While you're at it, why don't you like this video, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell. You can hear me yammer on about something else next time. And feel free to share this video far and wide.
Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment.